People have their own place to be, their rightful place, to where they get what they deserve. A farmer would belong to a farm, a lord would belong to their land. And for Imperial Princess Philomel, the scaffold was the seat of the day and the last place to be. A large crowd gathered at the execution site to see the last of the wicked woman. Philomel screamed at them, saying she didn't want to die, but that was soon silenced by the merciless kicks of the guards who grabbed her by the arms. Hear the sins of this criminal. A loud voice can be heard in the middle of the plaza where the crowd is gathering. Emperor Eustace gazed indifferently at the being who had once been his daughter. From his highest seat, and next to him, Princess Elentia, with a pale complexion, clung tightly to her father. Listen to the treacherous. The person presiding over her execution stood before her and began reciting Philomel's crimes one by one. The crime of impersonating the princess for 10 years in collusion with her mother. The crime of envying and slandering the princess, even though she saved her life through her mercy. The crime of trying to cause a national crisis by alienating the relationship between the Mage Tower and the Empire. Almost as soon as the ruler finished speaking, harsh shouts and swearing erupted from all sides. Quickly kill her! How dare you pretend to be a princess despite your low bloodline? Eggs and stones thrown by the angry mob mercilessly hit Philomel. Philomel thought that all her actions were meaningless just for the sake to be loved. Philomel gazed into the distance with eyes that appeared lifeless, as if she had lost all hope. A punishment of death penalty, her emperor father decided to execute her for being fake. Then Philomel's yellow eyes, which had been staring down without life, turned to the emperor. Ah, father. The emperor's eyebrows rose slightly at the sound of Philomel's tired and helpless voice. I did not impersonate the princess. In the meantime, I will not beg you to save me, just as if I were your daughter. However, before Philomel could continue, the emperor cut her off and called out the guards. Her father, Emperor Eustace of the Bellarov Empire, the one who didn't even show the slightest interest in her, even after 10 or so years of knowing Philomel as her own daughter. Now that Philomel had come too far, she couldn't relieve his hatred, but she hoped that at least the truth would be known, but was ignored. The emperor's order was like pouring cold water in her heart. She stopped, but the turmoil of the crowd was revived. What did I expect? She knew for sure it would turn out like that. It must have been because of the long torture. Anyone could guess this simple fact, but everyone treated Philomel as an imposter princess. It was because of the notoriety that Philomel had accumulated. Still, she held out her hopes, even if others didn't believe her. A rational and wise emperor might discover the truth. Of course, it was a vain hope. Was there at least just one time that I was daughter to you? Philomel asked. Not since Elentia appeared, even when Philomel thought she was his real daughter. Why did he always look at her with such cold eyes? She was his child, right? Even if he couldn't love her, couldn't he treat her as a child? In the face of her death, a strange courage sprang up. Dad, stop it. The emperor, who was about to answer, looked away when her daughter whined. The emperor affectionately embraced the shoulder of his lovely daughter, who begged him to leave that place quickly, instructed them to proceed with the execution, and then left the execution ground. Philomel was left behind, cleanly ignored. Just like that, Philomel, a rare villain, died without anyone sympathizing with her. Fortunately, her mouth was not stitched up because the emperor was quick to take care of it. It was the last good fortune given to the wicked. Her only innocence was overshadowed by so many evil deeds that she was buried, without ever seeing the light of day. Indeed, she was fit for a villain. Although she died a long and painful death, not by the guillotine, but by the executioner's blunt blade, because they could not give her an easy death. No one pities and sympathizes Philomel, not even her emperor father during her public execution. You could have at least given me your answer. That was Philomel's last words and memory. The ending of the fake princess was fitting of a villainess. A heavy sound was heard as the book was slammed. What the hell is this? A little girl screamed and tossed the book she was reading. Even if Philomel in the book committed wrongdoings, it wasn't enough to warrant execution. Even if the girl stomped her feet with her little body and pounded her chest, it didn't change the contents of her book. The 9-year-old princess regretted looking at the suspicious books she picked up in the garden. At some point, she wondered if someone had written a novel about the real imperial family. That's because this little princess has the same name Philomel as the princess in the book. I'm going to tell my father right away, and I won't let the guy who wrote this go. From the very beginning, they put forward an unheard of commoner woman, and said that she was the emperor's own daughter, and that this Philomel was fake. Philomel sat down on the floor. If her nanny saw it, she'd nag her for unreasonable behavior. In the first place, the reason she read this absurd and insulting novel, Princess Alencia, almost to the end was because she was filthy bored. Little Philomel remembered her mother, who had a beautiful blonde hair and green eyes. In contrast, his emperor father has black hair and blue eyes. However, little Philomel wondered why the book has the same descriptions of her mother, father, and even herself, especially her name, which are the same, except that the Philomel in the novel was portrayed as evil and a villainess. Philomel was impeccably sharp, with her brown hair and yellow eyes. She was young, but she didn't resemble her mother, whom she only saw in portraits, nor her father. Little Philomel started to doubt that she is a fake princess because of what she read. Even maids in the palace talk about how Philomel looks nothing like her mother and father. She prayed every night that her hair would become a bit lighter and golden, but as she grew up, it became a rather dark brown color. The reason she was put on probation yesterday was because Philomel burst into the emperor's office and made a noise because she was so upset that she wouldn't meet him. Seeing her daughter crying, asking why he didn't come to see her, the emperor ordered his attendants with his extremely cold face. It was always like that. Little Philomel have not received even the slightest care and affection ever since she was young. In the end, Philomel had no choice but to be dragged back to her room. As the emperor's cold attitude continued, others began to look down on the princess. Drooping, Philomel staggered toward the mirror hanging on the wall. "Do I look nothing like my mother?" she asked herself. Well, even if her hair color resembles her grandmother's grandmother, where did the bright yellow eyes come from? The girl felt depressed because she didn't really feel like her parents' real child. In the novel, no, it's not me. She didn't want to admit that she was the villainess who faced such a miserable end. Just the name was the same. The name Philomel was not common, but it was not rare either. However, Philomel was a little uncomfortable because she had repeatedly felt that the Philomel in the novel was similar to herself. In the past, it wasn't intentionally blaming her maid for her sins. Philomel really thought her maid had taken it. Her necklace was missing and misunderstood as it was the maid who last cleaned her room. No, it must have just been written on its own accord. Based on what an unknown outsider had heard about it, Philomel reassured herself. Suddenly, the voice of the nanny came from outside the door. She hurried to the desk and put the novel into a drawer. It was clear that she would be hit with a nagging bomb if she was found out reading a romance novel while she was on probation. Philomel didn't even get permission to come in, but the nanny opened the door and entered, frowning and looking around. "You weren't studying and you were doing something else, right?" the nanny nagged. Her nanny was the only one who could treat her badly, except for the emperor. She was also the empress's nanny, and everyone referred to her as her nanny, even though she never gave milk to Philomel. His Majesty has firmly instructed her to correct the princess's habits this time. "Lies," Philomel responded. As the emperor was indifferent to her daughter, in fact the affairs with Philomel were left to her nanny alone. The nanny knew that it worked well for her Philomel. and she used to sell the name of Eustace to try to control the princess. It was only after the nanny broke dozens of promises that Philomel realized she had been tricked. Philomel just wanted love and attention from the emperor, but it was all meaningless. Philomel lowered her tail first. The nanny, though near her old age, was of good form and strong. Even at her age, she had been hammered by her nanny. Because she was not like her mother, those words pierced her heart. She didn't look so much like her mother. Philomel asked cautiously about her. Yeah, it's amazing. Lady Isabella was smart since she was young, mature, and at the same time innocent at times. That's why you should be obedient on the day of the National Foundation Day. Philomel, who had been listening to the nanny's words with one ear and letting it out with the other, was wide awake at her disparate content. National Foundation Day. Is the book that prophesized Philomel's future true? If so, will she be able to escape execution for being an impostor daughter of the emperor? That's all, folks. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment down below, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I will be posting more videos about good reads you may like, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching. See you soon.